That when you look at Indigenous storytelling, whenever it's told from an outsider's perspective, it's always like, look at these Indigenous people and like all that they've had to deal with. Don't you feel bad about it? But don't offer solutions. They don't offer like bringing that into a contemporary aspect of, but what now? And are they still here? What's going on? It's really placing people of color and Indigenous people in particular as like people who only suffer trauma, and there's no positives and there's no way of coming out of it. When I thought about where this film could go and what we could talk about, a land acknowledgement was the perfect way to kind of like go into that and really deconstructing, this is what the real history is, this is what you're acknowledging, and this is how, the act of acknowledging is in a lot of ways duplicitous, but in a lot of ways it can actually be positive if you really know what you're doing and what you're talking about. So I think once that kind of like key clicked in there, I was like, perfect, balls rolling, we can get going. And because there is so much history of Fort York, it was tough to kind of like truncate it into that time span. But going in and using the framing device of kind of breaking down a land acknowledgement allowed me to jump around through time a lot and jump to these different stories that for me really stuck out because they were kind of emblematic of what we're seeing right now with like all of these social issues being addressed. Murder of Indigenous people that goes unpunished. You're talking about land recognition, land rights that have been contested for hundreds and hundreds of years. You're talking about treaty rights. You're talking about literally just like erasure of Indigenous history in the sense of like even the names of Toronto and like certain key landmarks around here, they come from Indigenous names and Indigenous words, but people don't really know that. So it was a really like, for me, those were all the topics that I really wanted to tackle. And I wanted to also address the fact that, Indigenous people still exist in Toronto. There are so many Indigenous communities that surround this area. But again, a lot of people just don't even think about that this is our history and our presence here is still valid. We're still here. We're still taking up space. We still exist. Well, I think when I was looking around Fort York, and I'd been there like once or twice on like school trips when I was younger, but coming at it from fresh eyes, that was something that stuck out to me a little bit is, Fort York actually does a fairly decent job at like Indigenous representation in their displays. But that one in particular, when you look at the other dioramas and the other mannequins that are even in that building, literally 5 feet away, they show a British officer looking very regal, very dapper, like gun down by his side, looking off and everything. And then you look over and you see this Anishinaabe warrior in the most threatening pose possible with a knife drawn, like battle cry on his face. I was really like struck by that because to me, that really just kind of shows the issue of how people look at Indigenous history in a nutshell, essentially, is, like people always know, oh, Mohawk warriors were great warriors, and that's what they're known for. Mohawk people are known for being really great warriors. Anishinaabe and Mississauga people, it's like that's the depiction generally of like the Hollywood depiction of Native people. That image has been permeated throughout history, and it was present there. And so when I was thinking about that, I really wanted to confront it in the sense of I didn't want to be like, we're going to be in your face necessarily about it, but having a young Indigenous boy be like, I want you to walk in here and I want you to look at this thing and just like see how it makes you feel,
McEwen was brought before a grand jury where he was acquitted as no British authorities had seen Wabakaneen's body before he was buried. Tensions reached a fever pitch. The Mississaugas allied with the Haudenosaunee and the British feared a war was imminent. The British spent years manipulating and dividing the Mississaugas and Haudenosaunee, with disease and famine sweeping through their communities and their alliances shaken. Hostilities came to an end.
I think the protest scene in the film that happens, it's protesting the murder of a Mississauga chief from the like late 1700s, but I wanted to use imagery that was super contemporary with like the signs and everything, so that you draw those correlations very easily. And you're like, I understand exactly what is happening here because I see this on the news and I see this in public and I know that is exactly what they're talking about. And I know that this murder relates to all these other murders that have happened recently. And still nothing is being done about it. So it's that idea of drawing attention to the history that kind of has gone unchanged. It's like those issues that were happening 200, 300 years ago, still very much active today. And you can see that lasting effects of them. Everybody on the day felt exactly that idea of like, we're here and this is important to make sure that the story comes across properly, because who knows when the next chance will be for people to address these issues here in this way.
The project you're doing, you got more than just your own instincts speaking to you now.
Mm-hmm.
You have a little chorus of people with ideas.
Yeah.
Those thoughts. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I think that's great advice.
Like working with him and actually getting his feedback and his input in the project, I think was really key, because you see somebody who's like been doing this for a long time and trying to figure out how to approach telling these stories in ways that are digestible, but in ways that also aren't like tethering you down and aren't like kind of like taming your voice, quote unquote. So hearing affirmations of like, yes, this is how you should approach this issue, and like these are ways that you can do it, and these are ways that you can tell that story, I think were super, super helpful. And knowing like, okay, somebody who is at that level, who's been doing this for a long time, still cares enough that they want to like give input to these younger filmmakers who are starting to kind of like flex their muscles a little bit and start to get into the industry a lot more. I mean, it means a lot, you get that mentorship, and it's like, okay, wow, yeah, there are people who are willing to really like help the next like generation of marginalized filmmakers and people from different communities and people of color. So I think it was really great, because it just gives you that sense of like, okay, yeah, I see you did it, I want to do it, So getting that affirmation, I think, was really, really important.
Yeah, it's those moments, where you kind of you doubt it a little bit, that you just get into it.
The doubt is the enemy. Grab it when it happens. Move on it. That's have the confidence of that idea. I'm doing that.